For me, this is a really great moment. I've been talking about the Waterloo medal probably for the last 22 years to visitors. So I've seen the medal dies and shown them electrotypes from that medal. Now is the first time I've actually been involved in reproducing that medal as it was originally intended. And it's a great moment for me. The difficulty for me was keeping my hands off it because I want to engrave. So we used the technology to reproduce and kept me away from it. In trying to produce something that was as close to Pistrucci's intentions as possible, there were two aspects. One, to get the lettering in that he'd envisaged but didn't actually appear on the die. And the second was to apply our scanning technology. We've got probably the world's best scanner in operation now that can produce very finely detailed models, and then a great engraving machine which will actually reproduce all the detail from that model. That technology wasn't around a few years ago, and also if we'd have applied hand techniques, we'd have been assuming that our hand techniques were better than Pistrucci's, which is probably untrue. So there are two main modifications that we've made. One was the introduction of the text that was originally envisaged and had never appeared before on a struck coin. And the second was to reduce the size down from the original 130 odd millimeters to the size that we're producing these in. Pistrucci's design is very much of a product of its time. It uses a lot of allegorical features which were key to this time and were very much understood at the beginning of the 19th century. It would be part of the everyday dialogue. The obverse is largely about the fact that they were right to win this battle. It's about the execution of power, of justice. It's light overcoming darkness. It's all of the things you would expect at the end of a long war. The reverse is more about time. There are 19 giants which represent the 19 years of war. There are stylized, very much stylized portraits of the four kings or emperors on the winning side, Russian, Prussian, Austrian and British. It's very much idealized portraits of those people, and Jupiter overseeing the whole thing, the highest god in the heavens, saying these were the right people, the right time, doing the right thing. The key features of the obverse would be the depiction of Apollo restoring the day, the Zephyr scattering flowers as emblems of peace and tranquility. The month of the battle is depicted by the constellation of Gemini, Castor and Pollux symbolising Wellington and Blucher. The Fates, symbolising the human actions, will be enforced by justice alone. Themis, the goddess of justice, holding branches as a reward for virtue and a sword for punishing crime. A robust man, representing Herculean power. The Furies subjected to the influence of power, and the figure of night receding into darkness. For the reverse, a central group of equestrian figures in action, representing Wellington and Blucher. A flying victory conducting their horses to the conflict, and around the central group many figures representing 19 giants, one for each year of the war, being struck down by the thunder of Jupiter. The text is fairly simple and self-explanatory, perhaps with the exception of the Latin inscription, which means joined federation or joined pact. Just two words, but in the same way as perhaps United Nations is just two words, but represents something much greater. This was four nations getting together and defeating a common enemy. Happened 200 years ago, would still have relevance today. To produce a medal like this would normally be a huge effort. But I feel that really Pistrucci did all the work 200 years ago for us on this, and we've been able to use and adopt our new technology just to reproduce what he had first envisaged and never lived to see actually produced. This is probably Pistrucci's masterwork. This was his opus magnus. Compared to some of his other work, which was much more simple for coinage, it was very detailed, very complex, and demonstrated his skills to the highest degree.